Right. So this is the lecture will cover chapter 2, and so in terms of equation of a line, slope, parallel, and perpendicular line. So first off, in regards to slope. And slope is given to be rise over run. Also in terms of over run. Also in terms of the change in y over the change in x, or in terms of equation y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the change in y over the change in x. So for example, given something like this, we want to find the slope, given 2 points. And so we have the point 7, 8, and then we have the point 12, 17. And so if we call this x1, y1, and then this would be x2, y2. So then our slope is going to be 17 minus 8 over 12 minus 7, and we get a slope of 9/5. And generally slope will be left in terms of a fraction. So in terms of, we leave it in terms of this improper fraction. Another example in terms of this process, okay? And so now let's say we have the point 3, -2, and then we have the point 1, minus 9. And again, we call this one x1, y1, and we'll call this one x2, y2. And so now our slope is going to be minus 9 minus the minus 2 over 1 minus 3. And so minus 9 minus a minus 2 will give us a minus 7. 1 minus 3 is a -2. And then a negative divided by a negative gives you a positive, and so we get 7/2 for our slope. Now, another example. And so let's say we have the point 8, 12, and we have the point 8, 15. Now again, if we do the same thing, call this x1, y1, x2, y2. And so now our slope is going to be 15 minus 12 over 8 minus 8. And so this is going to give us 3 over 0. But you cannot divide by 0. And so this is undefined. So in terms of a line and the slope of a line, there are 4 basic kinds of slope you can have. And so the graph. Okay. So we can have one line that goes like this. So this would have a positive slope. So basically as you go from left to right, you're going uphill. The next type would be one going in the opposite way. So one like this would have a negative slope. You could have a line that has no slope. So you could have one like this. So this has no slope or 0 slope. And then lastly, you could have one that goes like this, straight up and down, and has infinite slope or undefined slope. So the 4 kinds of slopes you can have. Now then, in terms of a line and the way we can write out that equation, and there are several ways. The general equation of a line which is in this form. that's one way of writing it. Not a very helpful way of writing it. Other two ways of writing out an equation of a line is point slope form. And so now you have in terms of y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. When the equation is in this form, m represents the slope, and then x1, y1 represents the point. And then the third way we can write out our equation of a line is in terms of slope-intercept form. Which is y equals mx plus b. So when the equation is in this form, m represents the slope, and b represents the y-intercept. So where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay? So those are the three ways, and out of those three ways, we'll be looking at in terms of these two ways of how to write out an equation on a line in this course. So then, for example, given something like this, find the equation of the line. Equation of the line. That passes through points. And so our point is going to be the point 37, and then the point 0 minus 2. Okay? And we're going to find the equation here in this line in both in terms of point slope and slope intercept form. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find the slope. So again, we'll do that part first. And so we can find out that our slope is going to be minus 2 minus 7 over 0 minus 3. So this will give us negative 9 over negative 3, which will give us a slope of 3. So if the slope turns out to be a nice whole number, we'll write it in terms of a whole number, what we have here in this case. Right? So we have our slope. Now in this case, we know that this point's on the line, we know this point's on the line, so we can actually write our equation in point slope form, using either one of these 2 points. Okay? So in terms of point slope, so if I first take that my m is 3, and my point is 3, 7, right? We would then take these 3 numbers, so we would call this our x1, and this is our y1, and we're going to plug it into this formula. So we take these 3 numbers, and we plug them into these 3 places. And so when I do that, we end up with y minus 7 equals 3 x minus 3. Right? And I could also do the same thing using the other point, because after all, both points are on the line. And so again, my slope would be 3. And my point, if I used the other point, would have been 0 minus 2. So now this is the x1, this is the y1. And so if I plug in, we get y minus a minus 2, which will become a y plus 2, equals 3 x minus 0. And again, obviously, x minus 0, well, that would just be x. And so we can just have a y plus 2 equals 3x. Right? So that's our equation in point slope form. But now, if I want to get it into slope-intercept form, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this equation and we're going to solve it for y. So first thing we're going to do is take care of our distributive property. So we'll get y minus 7 equals 3x minus 9. And we want to solve for y, so the opposite of subtracting is going to be to add. And so we'll add 7. And whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. And so we end up with y equals 3x minus 2. Okay? And that would be our equation in slope-intercept form. And so this number will tell us the slope of our line, and this number tells us the y-intercept. So it crosses the y-axis at -2. So when an equation is in slope-intercept form, so for example, we have this equation, y equals 2 x plus 3, and if I want to know what is the slope, well, the slope is given by that number, so that is 2/5, and the y-intercept would be 3. Right? Another example, if I had y equals minus 7x, right? Well, the slope is going to be -7. The y-intercept, well, there's no number out there, so the y-intercept is 0. And then, lastly, if I had this equation, y equals 9, and I want to know the slope, well, in this case, there is no x term in there, and so the slope is 0, and the y-intercept is going to be 9. So given the equation, you should be able to tell me what is the slope and what is the y-intercept. Now, well, how about giving the equation and drawing the graph of the line? So, for example, let's say we want to graph this. Y equals 2x minus 4. I'm going to graph that. And we'll do a couple ways of graphing this one. So let's graph this based off of what we know from this equation. Well, we know that the slope is 2. Is 2. And the y-intercept is -4. So if we make a graph, okay, so in terms of this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, going to the right is positive. 1, 2, 3. Going to the left is negative. On the y-axis, going up is positive. And then going down is negative. So we have in terms of our coordinate system, right? So now I want to graph this one. Well, the y-intercept is -4. So let's put it out there, right? Now the slope is 2. And so again, slope is rise over run. So the slope of 2 is the same thing as saying 2 over 1, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go up 2, over 1, and there is my second dot. And then it only takes 2 dots to make a line. And so we get in terms of our line. And then the other way of doing this would be we could also do this by, we need to have 2 points in order to graph a line. So that we can make a chart. Right? we're going to pick two values for x. And so let's take 0 and 1, two easiest numbers to plug in. And so if x is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Right? And then if x is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, minus 4 is negative 2. And that gives us our 2 points. And then we can plot those points on the graph. And so we have 0, negative 4, 1, negative 2, and we get our line. Right? So a couple ways of doing that. So, for examples, in terms of finding the equation of the line, so find the equation of the line. Passes through the points. And so now we got the point 3,7, and then the point 6,8. Right? So again, we call this x1, y1, x2, y2. And so our slope is going to be 18 minus 7 over 6 minus 3. And that'll give us 11 over 3. That's our slope. And then let's take this point as our point. And so if we plug that into our point slope form, we'll have y minus 7 equals 11/3 x minus 3. And that would be our equation in point slope form. Right? And now if I want to rearrange that into slope intercept form, we're going to take that equation and we're going to solve it for y. So the first thing we want to do is to do our distributive property. So this will give us y minus 7 equals 11/3 x. 11/3 times the minus 3 is going to give us minus 11. Next step, bring the 7 over. So we're going to add 7. And we end up with y equals 11/3 x minus 4. And that'll give us our equation in terms of that. Okay? Now, if I did it using the other point, okay? So if I did it using that other point, 618, and I went through this process, we would have y minus 18 is 11/3 x minus 6, okay? And if I rearrange that equation and solve for y, you should end up with exactly the same equation we have here. And I'll leave that for you to check, but you should be able to find out that they come out to be exactly the same, right? Well, lastly, then we have in terms of two cases of lines, one being in terms of parallel, and then the other case will be in terms of perpendicular. So parallel lines, right? So for example, if I have this line going like this, and I want a line that is parallel to it, then I would have a line that's going something like that, right? So parallel lines have the same slope. So, given a question like this, to determine the equation of the line that is parallel to y equals minus 2x plus 3 and passes through the point by 12. Okay. So given this line, I know that the slope of my given line is -2, which means the slope of my parallel line has to be -2. So we have our slope, we have our point, and so we can write out that our equation is going to be y minus 12 equals -2 times x minus 5. And then should be able to rearrange that and get that into the other form. And so we'd have y minus 12 equals minus 2x plus 10. Bring the 12 over. So y equals minus 2x plus 22. So that would be our equation of the line that is parallel to the given line and passes through that point. And then the other type of lines are lines that are perpendicular in terms of special cases. So perpendicular lines. So if I have, in terms of my first line, going something like that, my line that is perpendicular to this would then be going something like that. And so this angle here would be a right angle. And so you have for perpendicular lines that the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Right? So the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Right? So for example, in terms of what does that mean? So we have in terms of our slope, and we'll make this column the negative reciprocal. So let's do a few examples. So let's say that this number is 3, negative 4/5, and let's do 7/3, right? So negative reciprocal. So the first number is 3, which is the same thing as saying 3 over 1. And so negative reciprocal then would be negative 1/3. Okay? My next example is negative 4/5. And so what we do is just flip it over and you change the sign. So you get 5/4. And then 7/3, the negative reciprocal would be a negative 3/7. And so we got in terms of negative reciprocals. So then in terms of example of a question dealing with this, and so we want to find the equation of the line. That is perpendicular to y equals 4x minus 7 and goes through the point to 5. Right? So the slope of my given line is 4. So that would mean that the slope of my perpendicular line is going to be negative 1/4. So we have our slope, we have our point, and so my equation will be y minus 5 would be negative 1/4 x minus 2. And then again, I want to rearrange this, get it into the other form. And so we have y minus 5, negative 1/4 x, negative 1/4 times negative 2 will give us a positive 1/2. And then we're going to bring the 5 over. And so we end up with y equals negative 1/4 x. In order to add fractions, we need to have a common denominator. And so 5 is the same thing as saying 10/2. And so we end up with 11 halves. And so that would be our equation in terms of point slope form and slope intercept form. Okay? Other type of thing you'll see in terms of work will be word problems. So given something like this, suppose a phone company has a service charge of $15, and then charges $0.11 per minute. And I want to know what would be the equation that goes with this. Right? So the charge then is going to be 11 cents per minute, so that would be 0.11. And let's see, per minute, so let's use M for minutes, and then plus the $15. And so we got our equation, and then let's say, okay, so how much is the bill if we talk for 20 minutes? So we have our equation. We now know that it's 20 minutes, and so the cost is going to be 0.11 times 20 plus 15. And so you plug that in, and you end up here, the cost will be $17.20. Now, other thing in terms of coming up with an equation of a line. So another thing would be given a chart. So given something like this, you got the x value, and then you got the f of x value, or the y value, because again, f of x and y are the same thing. And so we got 1, 2, 3, and then when x is 1, y is 6, and this is 9, and then this is 12. Okay? So I want to come up with the equation of the line that goes with this information. So I can come up with my slope. It would just take any 2 points, and so let's just take the first 2. And so we'd have 9 minus 6 over 2 minus 1, and we end up with a slope of 3. Okay. And then I could take any one of these points, and let's take the first point. And so we would have y minus 6 equals 3 times x minus 1. And that would give our equation of a line that goes with that information, right? Well, lastly, given 2 lines, so given an equation for 2 lines, where will they cross? so for example, we have y equals 2x plus 3. My other equation is y equals x minus 5. Okay. This has a slope of 2. This has a slope of 1, so they're not parallel. So that means at some point in time they have to cross. And so if I'm going to find that out, one way would be to graph them and then work on the graph and see where they cross. The other way we can do it is algebraically, is when they cross, at that point, 2x plus 3 has to equal x minus 5. Okay? And then we can just take that equation and we could solve it for x. So we get the x's on one side, so let's subtract x. And so x plus 3 equals a minus 5, and then we'll subtract the 3. And so x is going to be negative 8. Right? And then, now that we know that x is negative 8, we can plug into our equations. And so we take that first one, we would have y is going to equal 2 times negative 8 plus 3, and we get this will be negative 13. And if we took negative 8 and plugged it into that equation, we would also find out we get negative 13. And so that will conclude today's lecture. Thank you.